Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Stress Management Workshop by Uplift Fitness. We're going to give everybody just a couple minutes to get on. I know sometimes these things, it takes just a second for people's computers to load up and get started. So I'm going to hang out. Yes, this is a giant cup of coffee. It's about the size of my head. That's what I need to get going in the morning sometimes. But if you guys would, have a little bit different setup in here right now. So if you can hear me, post something in the comments. Just give me a thumbs up or something, just to make sure that that microphone is appropriate volume. I know sometimes it can be a little low when we have it set up a little bit differently. But if you have already, you should, all of your stuff should pull up on my screen whenever you comment. So I'll be able to see through the entire thing. If you have any questions, thank you, Jametha. If you have any questions at all throughout the workshop, stop me immediately. So like, don't wait, don't write them down. Don't be like, well, I don't want to interrupt. Like, I promise you, there's certainly more people than just you that have a question about something. So if you don't understand something, type it in the comments. If you're watching on our website, sorry. However, we can pull them up on the screen just like that, so everybody else can see. And then, yeah, that way we can get your content to you a little bit better. And just before we get started here, I do want to give everybody kind of a heads up why we did this in the first place. Was really initially this was first just for our educators in Meigs and Mason County, just because we're getting ready to go back to school, or I know we're going back to school, and stuff's a little crazy right now. A lot of teachers, you're not technologists. You're not online learning specialists and having to learn a new task and try and learn how to do a new thing. It can be somewhat stressful. It can be very, very difficult, and especially in an environment where you're worried about your kids. You don't know if they're really learning what they should be or could be had they been with you in the classroom, and it's hard to manage. And I know it looks different for every school, but regardless, it's a new situation and new situations, especially if you've been doing something for 10, 15 years. First of all, thank you for doing that. There's a lot of teachers that made a huge impact on my life personally. So just know that we appreciate you guys very, very much. But we also wanted to open this up to everybody else because with, it's election season, which automatically makes our stress levels go way through the roof. Everything happening with COVID, if we have small business owners in here, these times are certainly a little bit stressful. However, we're going to teach everybody here today some steps to make sure that we can handle that in the very best way possible, manage it, reduce it. We have a lot of stuff in here. And I do want to do a quick little disclaimer. I mean, some of this, and when we get to the very end to really get into the stress reduction strategies, some simple tips and tools, they are just that. They're simple, and sometimes they seem like no-brainers. And when we understand something is a very, very simple concept, it sometimes removes our belief in that. So we kind of lose a little bit of faith in it. So we think, oh, well, just what you said, breathe through your nose is going to reduce my actual stress. Like, man, me sitting down breathing for 5 seconds is not going to make me less stressed at work or whatever. But when we pair some things with some of the other strategies in here, I promise you it's something that can just boom, take your heart rate down, take your nervous system activation down. It can change the hormones and the neurochemistry of your brain so quickly. Now, that doesn't mean that the rest of your day may not be stressful, and we're going to get into that, how to build a stress-free day-to-day. Some, again, very simple strategies. It's just a matter of doing them. And sometimes that's the hard part. And we have some things for you at the very end of the workshop. So make sure you watch all the way through. And if you can't, make sure you catch the replay and participate, because at the very end, we have something special for you guys that we want to do to support you past the live stream today. So obviously we're going to send you a few resources. We're going to follow you up with a few emails. I know you guys have been getting emails ripped out to you through the week. However, we're going to do something to make sure you take the knowledge and everything that we learn here today. Again, nothing crazy, nothing groundbreaking. It may sound a little bit sciencey or fancy, but really it's pretty simple. It's just a matter of getting everything kind of all in one place so we can understand it and learn it. But after that, we're going to do some things to make sure you can put that into practice and actually have a big impact on your day to day. So I think we have quite a few on here now between YouTube, our website, and Facebook. So we're going to give it about another 30 seconds. We're going to get started. I pray I'm not making a slurping noise whenever I drink a coffee. That's my worst nightmare. My wife screams. She hates that so much. So if I making you guys cringe. I'm very sorry. All right. If you guys are ready, give me a thumbs up in the comments, and we will get started here. We're going to get going. I'm going to pull up my screen. So I have my screen right here in front of me, which I'm going to share with you just a second. So if I'm not looking straight at you, I promise I'm not staring out into space. All right. So stress management workshop presented by Uplift Fitness. And we guess we can call it Gym Geeks Radio because we're in our podcast studio right now. So we're going to teach you guys how to identify and reduce your stress to perform and live better. So without any further ado, a little quick disclaimer: none of the information contained in this workshop is to treat any chronic or acute disease or illness. It is for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you have a medical condition, please consult your physician and do not use any information in this workshop to treat or manage a disease. Those of you who know me know that it kills me to say that sometimes, but we have to. So what we are going to learn today is what is stress. So we know what stress feels like. I'm 1000% positive every single one of you in here knows what it feels like to be stressed, but do we know what stress actually is? Because you define it. So we're going to do, because that's important, because if we don't know what that is, we can't identify it. So we have that, and then what causes stress. So we have the psychological, physiological, which is our body, and environmental stressors. So we're going to talk about those and help you identify those and maybe remove some of them that are unnecessary. And what happens during stress. So how stress, when we have a stressor and the coinciding stress response, how it impacts our sleep, weight gain, cognition, mood, hunger, all of those things. So, and then the last part, obviously, we're going to finish up, teach you some stress reduction strategies. We're going to do two different things. We're going to do short-term stress reduction, so some quick things that you can do in the moment. So something's happening right now, and again, we're going to tailor a lot of this stuff, I forgot to say, to educators, just because, like I said, we really want to do something for you guys because we appreciate you so much. I know your job goes very underappreciated, underpaid, all that stuff. I wish you got $1 million a year for what you do because you have such an important job. So we're going to give you something very quickly, a quick stress reduction strategy that when stress hits, when something happens, you can take 5 seconds, even 30 seconds to create that space so that you can make the best decisions possible, so that you can perform very, very well and do either your job or life or whatever it is very well and without stress, or at least bring it down to a level where it's very manageable. Because if any of you know you've ever had something that's really stressful, you had to make a bunch of decisions, whatever, it's really hard, and sometimes we just break down. We don't want that. We want to be able to perform at our very best level, especially those of you who are doing the very important job of teaching our children. And then we're going to do long-term stress reduction. So we can't just let stress keep hitting all the time and trying to use these quick reduction strategies. We want to build a life to where we have so much room for stress to where some of it comes, it's okay, it's manageable. Some stress is not a bad thing. I think this is what we have on our next one here. But we're going to go to some important things to understand. So we're going to have quick and long-term stress reduction strategies. So there's 3 terms that I'm going to talk about. I know some of you, if we have biology teachers on here, this is probably going to be a review for you. However, there's going to be 3 terms that I need you guys to understand because I'm going to use them a good bit. And you don't have to understand how they work in every single receptor in the human body. However, we have our insulin, which is number 1. So insulin removes nutrients from the bloodstream, namely glucose. We're going to talk about glucose a lot because cortisol, which is the next one, releases glucose when it is elevated. But insulin is very anti-inflammatory. So once released into our body, and some of you may be hearing that and be like, what? I thought it was pro-inflammatory. It's not. It is anti-inflammatory. However, when our tissues are resistant to it, so when you have insulin resistance or diabetes or things of that nature, you are going to not get any of the anti-inflammatory benefits because your body is no longer receiving that insulin. And basically what's happened there is insulin gets released and gets released and released and released. And your body's like, man, I'm already saturated with it. And it kind of tames down the receptors, so it quits accepting it. So you get a little bit of insulin resistance. So it has to release more insulin for the same effect. So it's doubled, and then it triples and quadruples. And eventually it's just pouring it out nonstop. And we're not getting any of the effects of it. So we're not getting anything good. And that's when what we call insulin resistance, which is reversible, contrary to what many people have been told. So insulin, very anti-inflammatory, except when we're resistant. And you can't become insulin resistant from stress, which we're going to talk about next, and cortisol. So cortisol, you may have heard, is our stress hormone. It is our stress hormone. It does a lot of things in the body. It is a very strong signaler for a lot of different processes in the body, which we're going to get to. But it releases glucose into the bloodstream. So when cortisol elevates, it is going to elevate in accordance with our stress response. So if we're really, really stressed, all of a sudden we're getting a ton of cortisol, which means it's going to dump a ton of glucose into our bloodstream. Now, real quickly, why would it do that? Well, if we see a lion at the watering hole, we're going to get freaked out. We're going to get stressed, right? We're going to panic, and it's going to jack up our cortisol. Glucose is going to be in our bloodstream, which means we're going to have a lot of fuel to run away. So it's really good for our survival. Now, if there's a small stressor, it's just a small amount of glucose. That's where most people are. Now, if you're obviously getting super high stressful jobs all the time, whatever, but most of us have these small stressors all day long. We just have this constant stream of glucose into our bloodstream, which means then insulin is constantly fighting that. It's constantly being elevated. So stress raising our blood sugar, which raises our insulin. So chronic stress means chronic insulin, means insulin resistance, or at very least it contributes to it. So if you guys understand that, again, give me a thumbs up. I definitely need reassurance here, because one of the things I hate is teaching a workshop or a class or speaking somewhere, and we get 2 slides in and we lost the crowd. So if I need to review, guys, drop a comment, say stop, hey dummy, nobody knows what you're talking about, go back over it, or we'll skip over it. You're not going to hurt my feelings, I promise, and you're not going to look dumb. And the last thing, very quickly, everything that we look at is through what's called the evolutionary perspective. So all modern disease is the result of the dissociation of our current environment and our genetics. So our genes evolved over thousands and thousands of years. If you look at it like a football field, it's like from the 1 to the 99-yard line, and it looked exactly the same. So we were evolved and designed to thrive and survive in a very specific environment. And our genetics and our genes take a very, 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 very long time to be able to change. But what happened is we just have this very, very consistent environment, and our genetics, everything thrive and survive in that environment. So when you get into evolutionary biology, it is just mind-blowing how many times this perspective comes up. But what has happened is our environment went from pretty much exactly the same until about the 1850, even 1900s, and then boom, the difference between now and what you would think of as medieval times or the 1900s, and you look at all of human history, I mean, we're at the 99.9 yard line at World War II, and the difference between now and then is massive. What we eat, how our day-to-day looks, so many things, and our genes just simply aren't designed for that. So we're designed to thrive and survive in a different environment, and what happens is that dissociation, our body is trying to save us, but what it's really manifesting as in modern times is disease. So that is important to understand. And one last thing before we go on, stress isn't a bad thing. There is good stress and bad stress. Good stress we call, something that provides us as a benefit. So exercise stresses our body, but obviously it's good. It gives us a benefit on the other side of that stress versus just somebody screaming at you on the street. It doesn't provide us with any benefit, and it just raises our stress levels for no reason. So that is really kind of what we call bad stress, but it's the same. Stress is stress, whether it's good stress or bad stress. We're going to need to understand that going forward. And one real quick thing, cortisol is inversely related with melatonin. So melatonin is what puts us to sleep. When cortisol is elevated, melatonin is down. When cortisol is down, melatonin can go up. When you get up in the morning, you should have cortisol super, super high. It should get you up, get you going. Glucose gets in your bloodstream. You're ready to go for your day. If you don't feel like that, either you had really bad sleep or you have some cortisol issues because you hit your snooze alarm all the time. So that can train your body to turn it off whenever you get up. So let's move forward here. So we're going to go over very quickly, what is stress? So number one, stress is anything other than homeostasis, which just basically means anything other than normal. So our body likes efficiency because efficiency costs less resources, aka it's easier for us to run with less food, less work, all those things. And again, looking thousands of years ago, that would make sense. Obviously now we can grab a snack cake from the fridge, or we can get food pretty much anywhere, but that hasn't always been the case. So being in a new environment is a good example. So classrooms look really different right now. Work life probably looks a little bit different right now. That's one of the reasons why it's stressful, because our brain likes efficiency. It likes the same things, because then it doesn't have to, take in every little thing in the environment all the time. If you ever notice, kind of when you're in a new space, you're looking around, you're noticing things, and and afterwards you have your blinders on. You can't really see those things. And that's like if you go to buy coffee, you're just on your way to work and you want to grab a coffee and you see some coffee beans sitting there. You're not going to sit and go, I wonder how they farmed this. I wonder where this came from. Oh, is this glue or is this a tie? How is this bag closed? I wonder what they used to dye this bag. But your brain would explode if you did that with every single decision throughout the day. Then it would just go crazy. But it turns off certain things, just like when you're driving, it turns certain things off, and it only wants you to pay attention to what you need to pay attention to thrive and survive or get through your day. So when things are different, it is stressful on the body, stressful on the mind, takes up a lot of your mental space, which, and again, for the teachers and the kids both, it's going to be kind of hard coming back, just being in a little bit of a new environment. But I promise you, it will get better as we get used to that. It'll take 2 to 3 weeks, hopefully. And those things will get better. Another thing, not being in homeostasis, having too low of calories. So if we're not feeding our body enough, or if we don't have the proper nutrients, especially again talking about cognition, choline, a lot of things you get from red meat and eggs, that is going to be your best friend through this. It can really help you manage your stress, and especially on the cognitive side. But having too low of calories means to the body that you're not thriving or surviving, you're starving. So if you ever hear us at Uplift Fitness, we usually talk about this more in weight loss and long-term weight loss and things of that nature. But having too low of calories is the worst thing that you can do, because it slows down your metabolism, which means that you're not going to lose weight anymore. And 2, it's a stressor on the body. So it's actually going to drive weight gain, because again, releasing glucose in the blood, raising insulin, all that stuff. So when your food comes in, it's going to go straight to our fat cells rather than where it needs to go. So too low of calories is a bad thing. And again, it's a stressor on the body because, it gets us outside of homeostasis. So stress is also anything uncomfortable or inefficient, which we talked about. Learning a new task is inefficient because we don't know how to do it. It's hard. So learning new things is stressful on the body. You guys have probably figured that out now, being back to school in the last 2 weeks, trying to figure out how, things are going to go. So that's probably very difficult. And talking about the students, this is a good one, like being made fun of. Why is that stressful on the body? Obviously it hurts us emotionally, but it's this kind of the thing we're talking about survival. It's always best for us to have a tribe as humans. So if you look at one human alone in the woods, it's very easy to kill. So our body has figured out, hey, when I make friends with more humans, my chances of survival goes way up, because 10 humans in the woods is a very scary thing, especially because we probably burn it down and chop down all the trees and use it to build stuff. But being made fun of, something like that, that's why that is such a big stressor, because our chances of survival plummet in that case, or at least that's what our genetics are thinking. Anything threatening, obviously, is very, very stressful. So if it makes it harder to thrive or survive, our body views it as a stress. Again, low calorie diets, one of those things. Or if a lion is chasing you and it wants to eat you, your body is going to jack up your stress response. And then the next thing is the stress response. This is what we call stress, but it's what we feel. So the hormonal changes, the changes in mood and awareness, that's the actual stress response. So we get the stressor, which is anything outside of homeostasis, uncomfortable, inefficient. And a quick note on number 2 that I kind of skipped over right there, is that anything uncomfortable or inefficient, we're going to seek out comfort. Our body wants us to do something comfortable to get away from that, because it doesn't like stress. So discomfort is something that it will drive us, whether that's through any different thing, food, alcohol, watching a movie, not doing a task, whatever. There's all kinds of things that our body will drive us towards that, because it wants us to seek out comfort, because that is the best thing for our survival. Not doing things that's uncomfortable or inefficient, even though long term it may be the worst possible thing for us, especially if we keep doing that. So last thing on number 4, changes of mood and awareness. Sympathetic arousal of our nervous system is a big thing, because we're going to touch on that. So basically you have your parasympathetic and your sympathetic. It's more of a spectrum. It's not like an on or an off or one or the other. It's more of a spectrum somewhere in there. The sympathetic nervous system can be somewhat elevated or somewhat down. But again, stress response can be small, it can be medium, it can be huge, and our arousal of our nervous system is going to coincide with that. So that's going to be important. And the last thing here, the feedback loop. So psychological and physiological feedback loops. That is basically And it's some of those things that can get super confusing really quick. But it's basically the psychological stuff going on in your brain, the neurochemistry in your brain, all of those things. It is going to send a feedback loop and make you feel a certain way. And conversely, you can do certain actions. Your body can just feel a certain way, and it will change the way that you think. It kind of comes back upstairs. So there's this loop, and it's constantly going, and it's gathering information and seeing what it needs to do again to thrive and survive. But we can hack it. We can change it. We're going to talk about that. Again, if you take a deep breath, that is a physical action of getting more oxygen in our body, and we're actually accumulating carbon dioxide is what's happening there to drive that down. However, that changes our thinking. It changes our brain for a very number of reasons. And if you smile, so if we all sit right here and we smile at our screen for 45 seconds, all of a sudden we're going to feel happy. We're going to feel excited. And what is that? It's a feedback loop. So those are going to be a little bit important to understand. So we're going to look through a few causes of stress. This is the big one. We need to kind of take mental note of these. So mentally, we're going to go through those first. Too many tasks, feeling overwhelmed. If you have too many tasks going on, your body is not going to feel like it can thrive and survive. So it's going to see this as a stressor. Now, obviously, again, teachers, you guys have a lot going on. You have a lot and a lot of different arenas. As a male, we have the waffle brain. Sometimes it's really easy for us to compartmentalize those things. Our females, not so much. You have what's called the spaghetti brain. Everything mixes together. When you have a lot of tasks going on, you get very overwhelmed, and it causes you to not be able to do maybe the one that is right in front of you. So understanding that going forward is going to be important. New environment or learning a new task, the brain wants efficiency. So we talked about that already. High levels of emotion. So this is one, again, I know a lot of you are thinking about some of your kids at home, and you're like, man, maybe they don't come from the best home situation, or they got a lot going on, and I don't know how well they're going to be able to do at home or online learning. And maybe you're a little bit worried about that, or you just see them kind of struggling because they're a little scared and they're wearing whatever it is. That emotion is also a stressor. And why it is we evolved with emotions, again, to help us survive because of the whole tribe to survive thing. But when this system is overly taxed or overrun, it presents itself as stress. So just a quick to kind of clear that up real fast. Feeling pain for others, tribe to survive. So when you feel pain for the kids, and then there's also love. So feeling love for people helps us survive because that drives procreation. And then fear helps us to escape danger in certain situations. But when it's in the wrong place, it causes a lot of stress and it's an issue. Anxiety is something I do want to talk about very quickly. Anxiety is perceived danger to avoid danger in the first place. And again, that's going to be size of the trauma is going to determine the size of the anxiety. So what that means is if I go see that lion, every Saturday morning, we'd get up and we had to go down to the watering hole to get a drink and fill up our buckets or whatever it is. And every time we go down there, that lion is there. And our body thinks, hey, you got away once. You better quit testing your chances. It's been 5 times now. He's there every single time. And every time you go, we go, oh my gosh, we get stressed. We freak out. Now, that doesn't have to be a lion. That can be a parent yelling at you or any number of things, or a boss yelling at you every time you come to a meeting or every time you do this one thing wrong. Our employees at Uplift Fitness in the future will probably have anxiety about mopping wrong because I will be the mop Nazi. But if the activity is constantly met with a stressor, it starts to breed anxiety. And that's a good thing in terms of survival because it tells our body, hey, don't go to the watering hole. And then we start to feel stressed. So all we had to do is think about the watering hole, think about that thing, that activity, that action, that environment that we're in. That causes stress, and then it causes stress and makes us avoid it. Again, we won't get eaten by the lion, but in modern times, it means we may not go to work. We may not go to school. We may not make a phone call because we're scared, because we think that something is threatening towards us, which again, our evolution and our body is telling us that for a reason. It's trying to help us survive, but in the modern context, it usually doesn't play out very well. And the size of the anxiety, so you can have just a little bit of anxiety. I have a little bit of anxiety answering phone calls from, being yelled out on the phone when I was 16, 17. But it doesn't halt my entire day. But if you have something that is severely traumatic, something that is very, very impactful and a huge stress, trauma, when you think about going in that environment, that situation, the anxiety is going to match that stressor. So I just wanted you guys to be able to understand that as well. But that's all the mental stuff. Too many tasks, new environment, new learning, levels of emotion, whether that's pain, love, fear, anxiety, those are all can be stressors. Physical, lack of sleep, obviously, as a stressor, if our body's not prepared, it is going to be a stressor. There's a lot of things that happen with cortisol and insulin there. A low-calorie diet we talked about, pro-inflammatory diet, so low-level inflammation constantly, chronically causes brain fog, which makes the need for stimulants, which drives our cortisol up, and thus we have to, or we're feeling stressed that way. And then lack of sleep, excited breathing patterns. So these short breathing patterns, we're really going to go over that here in a second. And we're going to come back to that last. Stimulants, caffeine, sympathetic arousal. My giant cup of coffee right here is just a big giant cup of stress. And then, yes, breathing patterns, range of motion. Exercise, good stress versus bad stress. It is a good stress, and we're going to talk about why it is the best good stress. Obviously, the guy that owns the gym is going to tell you to exercise, but there's other things that we can do too. So if you guys can't, you're not going to turn into a gym rat overnight. We understand that. We're going to help you regardless. Now, and then environmental, perceived threats. So anything that threatens your ability to produce, thrive, and survive. If you think like I'm going to lose my job because of COVID, obviously that's a perceived threat because you think you very quickly can associate, I lose my job. I can't put food on the table. I starve, and that is not good for thriving and surviving. So we make those associations very, very quick. So any perceived threat, anything that we look to the future and we think about, and we're like, oh my gosh, how could this turn out? And we're going to teach you again here in a second why that may not be the best idea to do that all the time. And the big one, airborne toxins is another one. So if you have mold, stuff in your house, that can cause inflammation, things that actually drive your stress levels way up, and actually hurt the systems and the receptors in your body that deal with stress. So kind of you get it from both ends. And then blue light. So we want to talk about this, and then we're going to do breathing patterns. We're going to move on. Blue light is the dissociation, again, between environment and genetics. So blue light typically came from the sun only. I know you guys heard about blue light from our screens and stuff. This is why that is an issue and why it is a stressor. So in the morning, the sun is kind of that orangey yellow color. And that means, to our body, it's time to slowly start to wake up. That just a little bit of blue light that comes through there, it hits our eyelids, even through our eyelids into our eyeballs. And historically, that would wake us up in the morning, our body says, hey, cortisol needs to go up so you can get up out of bed and we can start our day so we can go thrive and survive. And then when it passes overhead around noon, through midday, it's very bright blue light, and it tells our body, be awake, be awake, be awake. It's time to be awake. That is the signal that we got for thousands and thousands of years with that blue light. When it started to come down and it turned to more red or amber, we started to kind of come down and relax. Our cortisol levels started to drop, our melatonin started to rise, started to kind of fall asleep. And then at nighttime, that blue light was gone completely. And if what light we did have was fire, again, which was red, amber lights, those wavelengths. So our body evolved, our sleep patterns, our circadian rhythm are really around that blue light. Now we have it all the time. When we wake up in the morning, we flip on a light. It's a bright blue light, like it's noon, and we need to be up and awake 24/7. And then at nighttime, we have these screens, we have our lights, we have our phones, and then our body is just like cortisol, high, 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 high. You got to be awake. The sun is up, but really it's not. It's not up for 18, 19 hours a day. And what happens is our melatonin never gets a chance to rise because we have this low level cortisol. Plus, if we're stressed, it's already high to begin with. But this small little stressor. So blue light blocking glasses or turn off your freaking screens. That is your solution. You have to do that. That is absolutely non-negotiable. You have to limit screen time before bed at least 2 hours, or get yourself a really good pair of blue light blocking glasses from a company called BluBlox, BLUBLOX. I'm not associated with them, but they're really, really good. They're $100. Best investment you will make in your sleep. I promise you sleep really well. So that is blue light. And the last thing, we're going to talk about breathing patterns really quick. So we talked about the feedback loops. So again, feedback loop being our breathing patterns. If we smile, things that we think about can obviously cause changes downstairs. What we don't think about is I work with clients all the time with joint pain, things of that nature. And really, that's just lack of range of motion and strength around their joints. Now, what we usually do then is we want to activate those muscles. We want to get them moving. And what's happened is over time, they quit using those muscles so much that their body just kind of locks it up because there's no need for it. Or the muscles around it atrophy because they never get used. And thus that joint, it loses its range of motion. Our breathing, our muscles, or our breathing is controlled by our muscles. So we have a lot of things, around obviously the diaphragm, but there's also muscles on the ribs, and the ribs are your joints for breathing because they're the ones that open up and contract. Now, when they never move, guess what? They're going to be really tight all the time. Or if we have excess weight on coming from the outside, kind of pushing those in, it's going to cause our breathing pattern to be a little bit shorter and choppier, not these big, long, deep breaths that really help us to breathe well and drive down stress. So just be, maybe having a couple extra pounds on, or just never exercising, getting into that big range of motion, because you have to breathe heavy. If you don't train that, or you just you never do anything that's going to cause that rib cage to expand, your breathing pattern is going to be small and short and choppy. Now, what that is, it's a feedback loop to our brain, to our nervous system, which means excited, sympathetic arousal, which is going to be just literally a low-level stressor straight from our breathing. And again, why that is because if we're breathing short and choppy, it usually means that we're running away from something, so we need to be stressed, and our body recognizes that, so it drives those stress levels up just a little bit. And that's why, again, conversely, why controlling our breathing is very, very important. So we're going to move on, because we're going to talk about breathing a lot. So what happens in response to stress? We talked about cortisol. Our blood sugar dumps into the bloodstream. And if you ever felt shaky after you get really stressed, this is why your blood sugars came down, because it all dumped into your body to deal with that stress. Usually that happens with really high levels of stress, or adrenaline. In that case, adrenaline freaking dumps it all, so we can get away really quick. And then this is something, I've taken a course over the summer that was mind-blowing. It's called muscle-centric medicine. And we really looked at muscle as your ability to absorb and handle glucose. So it was called your metabolic sink. And what that means is that it's this giant sponge that absorbs all this glucose, and it can also wring it out. Well, here's the thing. You have more muscle, you have more ability to handle glucose. So stress from that cortisol and things of that nature aren't going to affect you as much. And you also have more ability to store. So if you do have a really big stressor, your body can handle a lot better. That is literally a structural mechanism built into our body that helps us prevent stress, that helps us handle our stress. So minor stress won't clean out an entire glucose store. And then after that, our nervous system is stimulated, our respiration rate increases, cognitive function goes down, because we don't need to think really hard, make a lot of really important, complex decisions when we're running from the lion, or we're approaching the lion. We get that little bit of low-level stress, which is what we all deal with every single day. We're going to illustrate that in a second. Going to blow your mind. So teachers, decision-making ability, your ability to teach sometimes, that is going to go down as our stress goes down. Sorry, I bumped my microphone there. Biochemical changes in the brain. So we get, like I said, we seek out comfort when we get stressed. Our body rearranges the literal structure inside of our brain. And you talk about doing that chronically, the receptors in our brain even start to grow more in favor of sugar, of alcohol, of other substances, things like that. So we get cravings for dopamine, whatever form that comes in, but your body's like, give me dopamine, make this stress go down, make it go away, seek out comfort. And usually that would come in the form of food thousands of years ago. Today, it can be any number of things. It can be food. There are many cases it is, but our food today doesn't look like it did then. And back then it wasn't an issue, because we didn't have the kind of food and crap on our shelves and in our cupboards like we did back then. So if you feel stressed and you all of a sudden have a craving for sugar or a craving for alcohol, or you want to get on your phone, I'm going to touch on that very quickly. That's your body saying, get this stress off of me. And then the technology piece. Whenever we are trying to focus, we're trying to write something, if you ever notice, you get a little bit of writer's block, and then you grab your phone, and you don't even think about it. You grab it, you scroll, and you put it down, and you go back. And then that may happen on repeat constantly. What that is, their body is uncomfortable because it takes effort to think through this issue. So it wants comfort. It wants that dopamine hit, and we have it next to us in our pocket or on our desk all day, all the time. As if you've ever noticed that you just turn your phone off, put it in the other room, how much better and clearer you can think and perform a task. That's why, because it doesn't have that immediate thing right next to it, at least not that readily available. So you feel it and you can avoid it, because it's just a very small signal to seek out that dopamine. Digestion. Number 4, digestion is impaired. So inability to digest food is not, or your digestion is not a priority when you're running from a lion. That's why if you ever hear people get really scared and they poop their pants, that's why, because that's not an issue. We don't care about what's going on down there. We want to get away from that lion so we don't get eaten. And then high inflammatory environments, which is going to be your diet, your omega-6 fatty acids, all these industrial seed oils and high amounts of sugar. And on the other side, being insulin and cortisol resistant, because we have cortisol, we're stressed all the time, or insulin's high all the time because of our diet and because of stress. and then inflammation never comes down. That's going to be an issue, and it's going to cause a feedback loop to further drive stress, which again is an issue. And the main thing with that, with the gut, is our second brain. If you haven't heard that, your stomach is your second brain. The bacteria, all the things going on in our stomach, that is the number one place other than our eyeballs and our ears that we get information from our environments. The things that we eat, things that are going in our body. Our body's very, very smart. It tells it a lot of things, and it gives it feedbacks. It feeds back up to our brain. So if you heard the vagus nerve, that gut feeling, that's what it is. It's a very, very intelligent system in our intestines, in our gut. And when that isn't inflamed, it goes straight to the brain. The brain becomes inflamed, and we get brain fog, and it's very, very difficult. If you ever hear people that do fasting every once in a while, they say, it's because I think so much better. I'm so clear in the morning. That's what it is. That inflammation, we don't put that junk in our body. You could just not put junk in your body, but those things don't go into our body, and we don't have issues there. And then also free radical production, which I'm not going to get into that a lot, but basically you get a negative, damaging immune response. And then if insulin or cortisol resistant, that could be very, very damaging because you don't have these things to go in, these anti-inflammatory things, and those cytokines just kind of go crazy and they damage your body. And that's why you see people who get tissue damage with diabetes and stuff like that. Or if you see people who are just very, very stressed all the time and they ache and whatever, that's what it is. It's driving that free radical production because your body thinks it needs to fight off of a threat. It's a very bad thing. So next, long-term stress impacts. We have just a couple more here. Insulin resistance, we talked about. Heart disease, type 2 diabetes, type 3 diabetes, what is type 3 diabetes? That's Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes, is driven directly by insulin, things of that nature, and the amyloid plaque and stuff like that. It all comes from this. And we don't have enough time to talk about that. If you want to talk about that later, we'll do a different workshop. High blood pressure, direct result of insulin resistance, because a lot of things with the immune response can't allow those things to relax. And obviously, if you're stressed all the time, your body's going to be tight all the time, and that's going to cause issues there. Chronic pain, so the inability to use our stress hormones to be able to fight that anti-inflammatory thing going on there. When we get that resistance, it's going to be an issue. Cortisol resistance, stress will seem worse and worse because the cortisol is going so high because we're resistant to it, and that some tissues get saturated, other things like our brain, not as much. It doesn't become as resistant. It still responds. So if our tissues aren't responding, we're getting a ton of cortisol to try and get them to respond. Our brain doesn't sense that's going on. It goes, holy crap, what's going on? So when you're stressed all the time, a little stressor becomes a huge stressor. And then poor sleep. We talked about cortisol and melatonin being inversely related, and sunlight and cortisol. So if you feel groggy upon waking up, I mentioned this earlier, if you hit snooze all the time, so what happens is you have this one signal to wake up in the morning. It's cortisol. And usually, again, blue light comes in, but we have an alarm or whatever. That's why if you wake up naturally, you feel so good, full of energy, because your body's natural system kicks in and we wake up how we're supposed to every single day. I understand that doesn't happen all the time. Now, the reason why you feel groggy is because that system gets dysregulated because we hit snooze, and it only happens once, and eventually your body adapts and realizes, like, man, I'm messing this up. I got to figure something else out. So I'm just not going to raise cortisol in the morning because that's expensive to make. And then stress becomes normal. This is the kind of end game here, is being sick and stressed becomes your homeostasis, and that's just what you feel. You don't even realize, I guarantee 90% of us watching right now, stress is your normal, and you don't realize how stressed your body is. If you ever go on vacation and you come back and you're like, man, I feel like a different person, and then it hits you really hard, maybe it's because you're playing catch up, but it's more likely that you finally got 4 or 5 days of low cortisol levels and you realize what that feels like, and it was just bliss and relaxing. And now the contrast of your day to day, instead of your normal plus a little bit extra stress from your day to day, you're down here, and you feel that when you come back to your day to day when you're relaxed, and it doesn't feel very great. Good adaptation for survival, but not for your health. That is not a good thing for your health. So if you're in a situation where you need that, that's a good thing. Again, evolutionarily, that would look very, very different. But I want to go through really quick before we move on the typical American day to day. Now that we know all these stressors, all these things, how they work. And again, guys, shoot me a thumbs up if you're kind of following along here. And again, if you have questions, stop me, drop them in the comments. I will further explain what you probably like. No, dude, I want you to freaking talk anymore. You're running like crazy as it begins. All right, so typical American day to day. No sleep. So we're tired. Let's just start there. We wake up. We don't sleep very well. None of us sleep very well. Breathing patterns, all that stuff is jacked up. And then we wake up, and then we have, like me, a size of a cup of coffee bigger than your head. I usually don't drink this, by the way. I just really like this cup. Um, get all these stimulants, sympathetic arousal. So we start baseline, we have no sleep, so our cortisol's up. And then our stimulants, it goes up. We have breakfast, or we skip breakfast, which makes it continue to rise. It never knocks it back down. We eat a low calorie diet, which is stressful chronically all the time. So it makes that stress go up. We rush to work, or we drop the kids off, or we listen to the news on the way to work, and oh my gosh, stress. And then we get that midday slump. We're really tired. We eat this, meal, get this massive insulin dump, and we're like, oh my gosh. And then our that insulin bomb for lunch, again, causing resistance chronically. It's going to cause issues, which stresses us out because it's like, oh my gosh, I got this work to do. I'm tired. This is rough. And then we get a little bit sad. And then it's like, oh, we get through the day. We rush to the gym. Not typically, most people don't. Or we rush to home, do our chores, or we had to do, get to the grocery store, stress. But if you do rush to the gym, take your pre-workout, all that crap, get it in there. You're sympathetic arousal goes way up. So just all day we're climbing. We're not even done yet. We have this crazy hard workout. Bad idea for most people. We rush home to get ready for the next day, and we're stressed. And we have our phone in because we just want to relax, and we just want to look at our phone and watch TV and not do anything for a little while. And then that blue light's coming in, and that cortisol has just climbed all day long. And then we get in bed and we're like, why can't I sleep? I wonder why. And then we don't sleep well. And then we repeat. We do that every day. Then we get cortisol resistance. We get insulin resistance. We get chronic pain. We get stress becoming our new normal. We feel tired. We can't make decisions. It's an issue. And then we have to break this cycle. So living a stress-free life. So we're going to talk about how that can happen. And then we're going to give you some strategies as we wrap up here. So stress removal, reduction, and management. So removing unnecessary stress. So if you have decision fatigue, if you've ever heard that Steve Jobs wore the same shirt every single day, is because he had a lot of decisions to make, and that was one less that he could make. So removing decisions, making a lot of executive decisions, things that require our thinking, like in the morning, sometimes what clothes to wear is a stressor on the body. So when we have too many, we get overwhelmed. That's an issue. And again, women, you are a little bit more prone to this. If your husband is forgetting something or doesn't remember something all the time because he's got a lot going on, it's because he's got that waffle brain. But you guys, unfortunately, it all melds together and you get this overwhelming feeling a little bit more. But decision fatigue. So knocking out some of those decisions, making them the day before, however you can do that goes into preparation. You don't know where to start on your to-do list. That is a big thing, but just knock out the bottom three, the things that you can do the quickest. So when I have these giant to-do lists that I freaking make for myself all the time, every day when I go to work, I make this huge to-do list I know I'm not going to get done. Or for you don't work for yourself and your boss gives it to you. It's so wonderful, isn't it? And you're like, man, where do I even get started? You get that decision fatigue, get that initial stress. Knock out 3 things that you can do in 5 minutes or 15 minutes or less. Pick them out, get the ball rolling, and then all of a sudden that stress just shrunk, or that list of stress just shrunk by 30%. And you're like, I feel a little bit better now because I know I'm going to do that after lunch and that after lunch, and the rest of the stuff I have a couple hours now to do. So knock out things that you can do quickly and easily without a lot of stress. There are not a lot of thinking. And then we have to have foundational habits that remove our daily tasks or sources of stress, like preparing our meals before we go, whatever that looks like, filling up a water bottle, packing your bag. And then so removing all these unnecessary decisions, stressors, things that we have to think about through the day, give us as much space as possible to do our job, do what we need to do. And then our victim mentality. So this is a huge one. And then right here, the little cup, we're going to talk about the stress. This is your ability to handle stress. This is the amount of stress that you have. Removing unnecessary stress drops it down to here. And then you have more room in your cup to be able to handle more stress in the future. And we're also going to talk about not only driving your stress levels down so you have more room in your cup, but getting a bigger cup to begin with. We talked about it a little bit, kind of hinted at earlier. Victim mentality. If everything is happening to you, then everything is an attack on you, which means everything is a stressor. So when we believe either the world revolves around us or that everything bad that happens is a direct assault on us. I have been guilty of this before, so I promise I'm not being preachy or saying that you're bad or wrong or dumb. But this victim mentality, thinking that this whole world, everything bad that happens to us is happening directly to us. Like, man, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. I love y'all, but you're not that important to the entire world to focus its efforts on assaulting your day to day. Things just happen. And we have to kind of have that attitude and be like, you know what, it's happening, whatever, we're going to do something about it. But don't believe the lie that every bad thing that happens is an assault on you, even though it does feel that way sometimes. I know it feels that way. Absolutely. But the world is too busy, has too much going on to worry about your day to day, however significant it is. And again, appreciate it, but it is not the truth sometimes. And then we got two things here. So mindset, if you don't take ownership or responsibility, that means that your situation is not in your control. Now we want to push off ownership and responsibility because that's uncomfortable. It's going to cause us to work, things of that nature. But if you don't take ownership or responsibility, that means it isn't in your control. And when something isn't in our control, then it's uncertain. And uncertainty is the ultimate source of stress. When COVID hit, everybody was uncertain. Everybody was uncertain. Everybody was stressed. People that had a ton of money, people who didn't, people who kept their job, people who didn't. Everybody was uncertain. It wasn't that we were, let alone the fear mongering and stuff about COVID, but it wasn't mostly that we were worried about getting sick and dying. It's like, what's going to happen to my day to day? How is this going to get disrupted? So if you don't take ownership or responsibility for things, regardless, and I was talking about this with my wife last night, not to her, but we were just talking about the topic. Taking ownership and responsibility for things that aren't your responsibility or whatever, saying, hey, that affects me, but I'm going to change it. That gives you the ability to control the outcome. So there's a difference between responsibility and fault. Just because you take responsibility doesn't mean that it's your fault. So when people hear like, I'm not going to take, it's not my fault, I'm not going to take responsibility for that. That's not what that means. It just means that you're going to control the outcome, or at least affect it the best that you can, and be okay with that, and know that you changed it positively or in your favor, however you needed to. So we always say, don't take responsibility for things that you can't really control. So if you can't have an effect on something, don't try to control it. So like, whatever is going on politically and stuff like this is way up there and out of our control. We can't do anything about that. And again, that's why it's so stressful, is because we're just like, what is going to happen to us? It's uncertain. There are things in your day-to-day that you can control that you probably care about much, much more. So don't freak out about things that or try and worry about taking responsibility for something that you can't control, especially if you haven't, kind of sat down and looked at what it may take to actually do that. But when you take ownership and responsibility, you get the freedom to influence the outcome. That's a big thing. But taking responsibility is not easy all the time, and mostly it's easier not to. And this is where a support system becomes your safety net, which is really important, because you're human and you will fail. Guarantee it 100%. It may be today, it may be every day after it, it may be once next week, but you're going to fail, and you need to prepare for it. Have a safety net so that you can have a sound mind. And here's the thing: if you want to prepare your safety net after you failed when you're stressed, you're not going to be able to. Probably not going to want to, because you're going to be ashamed that you failed. That's a stupid thing. Don't do that. Don't be ashamed that you failed, because you're human. It just means that you're human. But you need to set up that safety net. Now we're going to help you do that at the end of the workshop. But having that support system for whatever it looks like, this is what I'm personally working on right now more than anything, because I have a lot of quote unquote failures throughout my every single day, and having something to fall back on, to where I just bounce back, I hit that safety net, we come right back, and we get back to work, and we knock out some decisions and to-dos, so our stress goes down. So safety net is important. Take responsibility and ownership for things that stress you out, that you want to change, that you wish they would change. You can do that. So having that response, and then once you've made that change and that influence, you can know that you did your best job and be okay with that. And that's a tough thing to do, but it is very important. It can go a long way in reducing your stress. Because if you're thinking, especially again, teachers, you're like, oh my gosh, so much is going on. It's like you have the ability to affect their day-to-day and help those kids out so much, and be a source of enjoyment and all these things. And not to put pressure on you, you don't want to do that, but just know that you're doing so much already. And if you do a little bit more, that is phenomenal. And do not be stressed about controlling everything, because you simply can't. You're one person, but you can do your part, and you need to be okay with that and excited about that and happy that you can do that. And that will drive change in the future, certainly. Get a bigger cup. This is the last one. Stress is stress. If your cup is full from lack of sleep, from low calories, mental fatigue, 3 cups of coffee, or one huge one, your cup is already full. You have a ton of stress for your day to day. It is a crazy intense workout that is going to be physically stressful. going to be the best thing possible. If you ever guys hear us rag on CrossFit, sometimes it's because of this. Now, obviously, there's the mental escape. There's things like that. That is very, very important. That makes our stress levels actually go down. But there's a certain point where too much exercising, even these things that are good stressors, it makes our cup overflow. And then our brain is cleared out, but our physiological stress cup is completely full. And guess what? That feedback loop is coming. And we're going to get mood swings. We're going to get swings. We're going to get these crazy cravings, stuff like that. We're going to get hormonal resistance. We're going to get hypothyroidism, all that wonderful thing that we do not want because of this crazy stress response. So yes, exercise, things like that, appropriate, good. However, they can become a big issue. Identify when your cup is getting full is a big piece, which is a skill. That's something that takes time to develop, but we have that kind of list of stressors. Hopefully you guys are learning these stressors for your day-to-day, whether it's the stimulus in the morning, and it takes some time working with these. You'll notice over the next 6 months, you'll get better and better at identifying these things and going like, wow, when I do reduce that coffee or the afternoon, monster or whatever it is, or if I sleep a little bit better, man, that my decision-making ability does go up, or my sleep does get better the next night, things of that nature. Take some time to work with these things. But that is a skill to identify when your cup is getting full throughout the day-to-day. And stress builds and builds. It sometimes doesn't happen all at once, and the symptoms may not appear until something breaks, aka the cup spills. So we can take stress out of our cup and keep the level down, but the best defense is to increase the size of our cup. Now, we talked about feedback loops. So much of stress seems physiological or psychological, but we really underestimate the physiological component. So a lot of stress up here, it's psychological, and that's where we kind of feel it, but there's a lot of it. Like we said, the feedback loops, that is a physiological, that is the structures within our body, the receptors, our muscle, things of that nature. So what if our body was physiologically equipped to handle large amounts of stress? We had this bigger cup because our machinery and things in our body was bigger and more equipped. Do you think that would impact our ability to handle stress psychologically? Absolutely. So increasing the size of your cup, that means metabolic flexibility. So that talks about your diet. I mean, you guys have no idea what I just said or what that means. We can talk about that later, but really it just means, having really good sensitivity to insulin, which again, just is eating a balanced diet, things of that nature. I hate saying balanced diet because our government has completely perverted that idea. And then muscle. A lot of muscle is a huge ability to handle stress. If you notice that people that work out all the time and they're really strong, and it's like, man, how come they don't get as stressed as I do sometimes? One, they have a routine, have a ritual, but their machinery in their body is better equipped to be able to handle stress. That's just a fact. And then the nervous system response to doing strength training, not cardiovascular training, strength training, actually trains our nervous system to where, we had this huge response from strength training, and we built up to that, over the course of a couple of years, but even just instantly, that 48-hour adaptation. That's where, I've made the argument many times that just, exercise, even if it's not great programming or whatever, if you're doing a little bit of strength training, just acutely, it can be a huge deal. We actually talked with the clinical psychologists from Hopewell about that, working with their patients with designing some strength training stuff for their psychiatric patients to give them the space, because, that stuff it's so good. Commercial time. Gym Geeks Radio. I'm in my podcast studio right now. If you guys want anything to do with health, fitness, wellness, living your best life, then Apple, Google, Spotify had that in there. But this is basically what I'm doing right now. This, our podcasts are very, very short, to the point, 20, 30 minutes, something you listen on your way to work, and get all the skills that you need. And it's not just about how to get big and jacked. Actually, I don't think we ever talk about that. It's about health optimization, optimizing your life so you can have a great day to day. And whatever it is that you love, if you love to golf, we want you to be able to golf to the best of your abilities and get maximum enjoyment out of that. If you love to teach, whatever it is, we want you to be able to do that as best as possible. And I promise the sound is a lot better than what we got going on here today. But had to throw our commercial in there. Now we're going to look at quick and simple stress reduction strategy, and then we're going to get the long-term ones, and we're going to have a surprise for you then, and we will be done. So quick and simple. Again, I took a muscle-centric medicine workshop, got to meet some Navy SEALs, talk with them, and one of the things they talked about was moving off the X. So when they're in battle, when somebody gets shot, these are operators, these guys that are like doing the stuff in the movies. They said, basically when somebody gets shot, the first thing is move off the X, is get away from that place where you just got hit when things are going on, get out of the situation. So when we talk about move off the X, that is the thing. That is what we're talking about. So first, quick and simple stress reduction strategy is deep breathing. Not just any deep breathing, but it is deep breathing. And again, I told you it was going to be something super simple that we would say, well, that doesn't really work. I mean, I got all this stuff going on. I'm so stressed. But you literally have receptors inside your nostrils, inside your sinus cavities that are parasympathetic. And you have sympathetic receptors in our throat and in our mouth that whenever air passes over them, it tells our body to get excited. So if you have a stuffy nose and you feel stressed, that's why. If you don't breathe through your nose, or if you have feedback loop coming the other way, causes you to mouth breathe a lot, you're going to be very stressed. So there's a lot of things going on there. And plus, we talked about the structural thing with the ranges of motion, with our diaphragm, with our ribs. Deep breathing, 2 times the amount of seconds out as you come in. Now, as long as possible is going to be your key, but then you can control that feedback loop. And what you're going to do is you're going to create mental space. Now, the cadence is important, and it has to be nasal. Cover your mouth if you have to. Do this, but it has to come through your nose. Again, because like I said, with those receptors. So breathing through your nose, if you breathe in 4 seconds, we want to shoot for about a 10-second breath. You'll find if everybody would just try that right now, try nasal breathing right now. Try to breathe in for 10 seconds. You're not going to be able to. It'll take one because your stress level is about here and you don't even know it because it's your new normal. But that just surprised you. You thought, oh, yeah, I'm relaxed on a nice Saturday morning. No, you're not. Your stress level is at a baseline that is just your normal. So we're going to bring that down. It'll take 4, 5, 6 breaths trying to get to 10 before you get to a 10, 8-second breath. Or if you just don't have that range of motion, you're going to feel like right here, it's going to be tough to do that. But if you do 10 seconds in, it needs to be 20 seconds out. If you do 4 seconds in, it needs to be 8 seconds out. And if you can hold it in the middle, so if we breathe in, again, through your nose only, and we hold it for about 3, 4 seconds, however long that you breathe in for. If you breathe in for 10 seconds, hold it for 10 seconds, and then out double. If you do that a couple times, what you just did is you created mental space to move on down the line here to these next couple of steps. So you can't, again, if you have the decision fatigue, if the lion is chasing you, proverbial lion is chasing you in your mind, you're not going to be able to do what you need to do to reduce your stress and perform and thrive and survive in your job, in your environment, whatever is stressing you out right now. Make the best possible decision. So deep breathe, that just needs to be instant. Anytime you feel that stress response and you learn to identify that, do that breathing technique. Twice as long out as you come in, and in as long as possible, and a breath hold at the top. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to move off the X. So you're not going to have that decision anxiety, because you're going to find 1 to 3 things that you can accomplish in 15 minutes or less. Or if something is going on, you're going to look for the one thing that you can do immediately to alter the situation, to change the situation, to make it a little bit better. But you can't do that if you're stressed. If you don't do number 1, you're not going to do a very good job of that. Things might get worse, and you're actually just going to get more and more stressed as you go along. So deep breathe, move off the X, make something happen, or do one. If it's a very calm situation and you're just getting a little overwhelmed, knock out 1 to 3 things, do something, or take a break. What do you have to do? But do 1 to 3 things you can accomplish in a few minutes, and you will feel better if you're less overwhelmed. And the third one is pause. Recognize the situation is non-threatening. There isn't actually a lion in the room, unless there's any lion tamers on here, which would be super cool. However, most of you are teachers or workers of some sort, where at your job there's not immediate danger. You're not going to die from your stress, but your body doesn't know that. So you have to, again, feedback loop. We need to remind it of that. So we need to think like, okay, yes, my boss just came in and yelled at me. Yes, this kid just acted out and I'm a little bit emotional about it, whatever. But how is that going to affect my ability to thrive and survive? It's probably not. And if there is, I'm going to take responsibility and ownership for it so that I can do it very, very well. So pause, organize your tasks, and proceed. And that's another thing. When things happen, get a little bit out of order, they're inefficient. Again, that's stressful on our body. So we need to take the time, you can deep breathe, move off the exit, get some mental space, get some space there, and go, okay, the situation is not threatening to my life, obviously. And it doesn't feel good doing this. You feel like an idiot. I feel like an idiot every single day when I do it. But eventually you feel so good to be able to do this. You're like, heck, this is a no-brainer. I'm going to do this every single time. But you have to convince yourself that you have to do it. But pause, recognize it. Okay, not stressful. I know, butthead boss just came in, yelled at me, made me really stressed. I'm going to deep breathe. Okay, now my cortisol levels are actually back down to baseline. I'm normal. I need to do these 1 or 3 things. All right, now let's think for a second. Let's organize my tasks. Maybe that just changed my whole day to day. Let's take 5 minutes, organize it. That way I'm not all day. My brain's going, what's coming next? What's coming next? And when we're organized, it knows where we're going. That is very, very important. And then recognize your role, control what you can and do it best. We talked about taking responsibility and ownership. Control what you can, do it to the best of your ability. And because you can't perform under stress, all the things that came before that are very, very important. So whatever tasks you just organized, whatever things you just knocked out, control what you can, do your best at it, and be okay with that. Because if you're not okay with it, guess what? You're not going to do your best. And that's going to be much worse than had you just done your best. But you can't do your best if you're stressed. You should put that on a t-shirt or a cup, a giant coffee cup. And then repeat. I do this every 5 minutes some days, literally every 5 minutes. Because I've let all the little things go and they've built up, and I have decision anxiety and all these things going on. And maybe I did drink this giant cup of coffee in the morning. I realized I screwed myself, set myself up for failure. I didn't pack my food with me. I didn't pack my workout clothes. I forgot to do programming for a client before. They're coming in 2 hours. Oh my gosh, I got all this stuff to do. But also all the other stuff, blah, 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 it goes crazy. I deep breathe, I move off the X, I pause, recognize my role, get back at it. About 15 minutes later, I'm stressed out again. And then I deep breathe, move off the X, pause, recognize your role. And just it's all day. Sometimes I'll do it once a week. It just depends. But this is a quick and simple stress reduction strategy. I'm going to take a screenshot of this. I'm going to post it in the group and send it to everybody. For those of you watching on the website and YouTube, that aren't in the Facebook group, can't participate in those things, we're going to send you all this stuff via your email. Actually, everybody's going to get. So long-term, this is the last one, long-term habitual stress reduction. Keep your cup empty to begin with. So this quick stress reduction is great. We can knock it down. We can just really, really quick in the moment, whatever happens. But it'd be a lot better if that wasn't an issue in the first place because our cup was completely empty or bigger. So identify right now, if you want to do it on your phone or whatever, identify 1 to 3 systemic stressors. What do you do every single day that causes stress or allows stress to happen? I guarantee right now you can think of 1 to 3 things if you're really honest with yourself. Me, it's not filling up my water bottle. Why is that stressful? Because then I don't get hydrated. 2, I'm in the health and fitness space. I'm supposed to be the guy that is perfect with his health all the time. And then I put this mental pressure on myself that I'm not doing my job or not doing what I'm supposed to. And I get stressed about it. And I think that the rest of my day, I'm not doing a very good job because of whatever. And it just snowballs a little bit. It's literally filling up my water bottle. I bought myself a gym bag. Preparing or taking my stuff with me to work because it was such a hassle. Carrying it all out the door was a stressor. So I just didn't do it. And then I wasn't prepared. So I bought a gym bag. And boom, stress levels went down. It sounds ridiculous. I bought a water bottle and I bought a gym bag and it changed my life. So I'm sure there's something, because you probably do stuff way more important and significant than I do, that you can knock out 1 to 3 systemic stressors, things that happen every single day. Fix the sink, or fix the well, not the sink. I don't want to say that backwards. Fix the well, not the sink. If you got a squeaky sink or drip or whatever's going on, you're not getting water to it, fix the well, not the sink. And then number 2, prepare your habits and your support system. Pack a bag, fill that bottle, even if you don't need it. I'm not going anywhere tomorrow, right? I'm not going to be out and about. I don't need a water bottle. Fill it up every single time, every single day. Find those things that you can do that's going to help you if chaos does ensue. Because here's the thing, we don't plan for stress. Sometimes we can, but most things that happen that get us out of whack, we don't plan for it. So plan for it regardless. And again, you may feel really silly on Saturday night packing your gym bag or something like that. That will, how you're not going to get to the gym tomorrow. Why would you pack it? Well, what if you do? What if a friend comes over and all of a sudden they're like, hey, you want to go work out? Obviously, very silly example, but things of that nature. Pack it, make it happen, prepare. And then your habits, things of that nature will start to fall in line. Will make things a little bit easier, and you'll start to develop a stressless life, a life that is not as stressful. And then even if you don't need to, set up your safety net. Your safety net is very, very important. And we talked about that a minute ago. Figure it out. That takes a little bit of planning. Again, this is a long-term stress reduction, habitual stress reduction strategy. We need to have that safety net in place before we need it, because if you're falling, it's going to be really hard to rig up a safety net while you're falling. Probably going to be a lot more focused on not dying at that point. Physical resilience, make the feedback loop stronger. We talked about the muscle and things of that nature. CO2 tolerance. Divers, free divers, people that hold their breath and dive down for a mile or whatever, they pretty much don't get stressed, or they have psychological issues, and which I would think you would have to do that. But CO2 tolerance. CO2 is something that, again, feedback loop, stressors, things in our brain. When we have very, very low tolerance to CO2, one, because we take short, choppy breaths all the time, we never deep breath in and hold it. Feel that burning sensation. When you can build up tolerance to that to the point where it's not a big issue. Now, I just read a paper I won't bore you with about that, and it was mind-blowing, super, super good. Research just came out on that. So CO2 tolerance, getting in better shape, that's what that boils down to. Again, of course, I'm going to tell you, you're supposed to get to the gym, whatever. I'm just telling you, CO2 tolerance plays a big role in your physical resilience to stress, the physiological resilience that can activate that feedback loop in a positive way. HPA axis dysregulation. You probably don't know what that is. Hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. If you've ever heard of adrenal fatigue, which isn't a real thing, HPA axis is what they are referring to, which is just your sleep, your breathing, stimulants, light, all those things. This regulation of our hormones, everything is supposed to be this beautiful symphony, and it turns into chaos because we have the sleeps all jacked up, everywhere playing its own tune, not at the right time. Our breathing patterns and practices are not in place. We have too many stimulants that are sending things the wrong direction. Our light environment, which is that blue light and all those things, is an issue. And then the last one is removing inflammatory foods. This is massive. This is so big. Apart from exercising, building the range of motion, literally, of our breathing, and getting better CO2 tolerance, the physical part here, remove inflammatory foods, omega-6 fatty acids, soybean oil, canola oil, grapeseed oil. Good Lord, it's awful for you. Omega-6 is pro-inflammatory. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. You've probably all heard, we need more omega-3s. No, we don't. We do not need, yes, it would help. We need a ton less of omega-6s, because your balloon is only this big in your cell of how much omega-6 or omega fatty acids that you can fit in it. It is completely full of omega-6s. It doesn't matter how much omega-3 that you eat. It's already full. It doesn't matter. So we have to remove those. And the thing is, our ideal ratio as human beings, omega-6 omega-3 fatty acids, because one's pro, one's anti, is 1-to-1. Then they're in perfect balance. Our body is perfectly healthy. That's our immune system. Again, stress, cortisol, insulin, all that stuff can mess with that. But these inflammatory foods, what they do is, most of us walk around between 25-to-1 to 100-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. We are 100 times, or what is that, 10,000% more inflamed than we should be from our diet alone, let alone the stress, the chemicals, the sugar, the undigestible foods. That's another big thing. The digestion is a big, big piece. Again, feedback loop. If it's an inflamed gut, you're going to have an inflamed brain. Sugar messes with the insulin, which messes with the cortisol and our ability to handle stress. All the chemicals and sugar-free foods. Oh, yeah, those are so wonderful, aren't they? No, the chemicals are just as bad. It's more of the load and the amount that we eat. So remove those inflammatory foods. Now, oh my gosh, that's so much stuff. What do? We eat whole foods. And that's it. That's all you have to do. I've had so many people, that I've worked with, and they're like, I got so much, I don't know what to do with my diet. Do I do keto? Do I do no sugar? Do I do this? And it's like, eat whole foods. And then we talk about all this complex stuff. I could do a whole PowerPoint, a whole talk on all this stuff, and I could get this super complex topic, and like, man, that's kind of tough. I don't really have the knowledge to be able to put that into my day-to-day. And then we really break it down what it looks like. Every single time, it comes back to eating whole foods. If you're interested in weight loss or anything like that, start switching to whole food diet. Your hunger regulation systems in your body and your brain and all these things, and your stress levels and everything will line up. There's a lot more to that picture, but that is a massive piece, and it's a first step that you can't skip. If you do, guess what? You may make progress, but you're going to be doomed to fail in the future. I hope not, but that's typically what happens, unfortunately. So that's it. We're going to go through this. I'm going to look at those real quick. Deep breathe, move off the X, pause, recognize your role, and repeat as many times as you need to. Quick and simple stress reduction for in the moment, and then long-term habitual stress reduction. Identify those systemic stressors when you have the space. Saturday morning, maybe fix the well, not the sink. Prepare for your day, even when you don't have to. That will turn into habits, and then find your support system. Physical resilience, so getting in shape and stuff, that's very, very important. HPA axis regulation, so your sleep, your stimulants, and your blue light, which are all very, very, very related. When you help one, it's going to help the other. And then remove your inflammatory foods, which we just talked about. Just eat a whole food diet. Done. Not a plant-based diet, a whole food diet. You guys, plant-based is awesome, especially for you that do it for moral reasons. That's great. But when you talk about the science, just, plain black and white. Actually, the American diet, I saw a study yesterday, is 90% plant-based. So all of your French fries and your soybean oil, you can eat nothing but French fries and soybean oil and be 100% vegetarian. So not going to be very good for you, extremely pro-inflammatory. So actually, 90% of the American diet, the most unhealthy diet we could possibly think of for human physiology, is plant-based, 90% of it. So plants aren't the issue. But that's it. So post-workshop, this is what we've been doing to you. First of all, you guys have listened to me talk for an hour and 10 minutes. I don't know anybody in their right mind that would do that. So thank you so much. I hope that was valuable to you and I didn't just waste your time. If I did, you can come throw a rock at me on Main Street. That's totally fine. I will accept that. However, we want to know, as you see here, you probably feel right now, hopefully, if you can give me a thumbs up if this is true, a little bit more equipped, a little bit more aware, at least, of things that you are able to do. Maybe you took just one or two skills away from that. In that case, that's really great right now, but Monday is coming. When we get back in those habits and things like that, something we didn't touch on that I want to talk about. Like, you may have a great summer, and then it's like, man, I formed all these healthy habits. And then thank you very much, Rachel. Whenever we go back into the school year, all of a sudden it's like, we pick back up in that environment so instantly. Actually, right now, talking about being grateful for your stress, it provides you a space to change. So like, if you have a typically stressful work environment, again, talking about the teachers, and everything just changed, guess what? You have a new environment. And because you have a new environment, you don't have any habits in that environment yet. So you have a golden opportunity to be able to create some habits and things of that nature that are going to be very, very helpful for you. So that is wonderful to be able to do that. Even though it's stressful, we can be grateful for that stress. It's something we can talk about because I'll talk about that for hours. However, hope you're feeling great. Monday is coming. Crap is going to hit the fan Monday morning, certainly. So we want to know what we can do to offer continued support. Something I thought about, I'm sure some of you are like, well, obviously I want to get in better shape. Things are really tough. Well, first of all, I'm going to say, if you're going back to school right now, things are stressful. Now's not the time to start working out. Why? Because not going to talk about it because I'll get here for hours. However, may be kind of funny hearing me say that right now you shouldn't start working out because it's a really stressful time. But learning new tasks, remember, is stressful, and we don't want you to have a negative association. We don't want exercise to be the thing that every single day makes your cup overflow, because what's going to happen is give you a negative connotation and association with exercise. Remember the anxiety piece? That's going to create that anxiety around exercise. We don't want that at all. We want it to be a comfortable, enjoyable, something that you look forward to, that adds value to your life. It will add value, but if it's physically or mentally stressful because you're learning these complex tasks or these things or whatever, that can be really hard. So something I thought about is just on the group here, if you guys want to do something, I would be ecstatic to drive to Meg's or wherever, central location at 5 a.m. in the morning and take you guys through a workout or something like that. Can't do it for forever because we're very busy, usually work 60, 70 hours a week. However, if you want to do that a couple weeks, or we can do something and get it started, that is certainly an option, and can offer continued support online that's much more efficient as well. And then also, if you guys want to practice some of your stress reduction strategies, or you have more questions, if you think of questions throughout the day, you can leave them in the group, and I will be happy to respond to those via this platform right here. Maybe we can do that for a couple weeks or whatever, but think on that. If there's anything, we're going to do something regardless, whether it comes out of my brain or from you guys. I would much rather it come from you all than myself, because you better than you. But think about something that we could do to help you. absolutely anything. Again, like I said, we originally started doing this for educators. We're very, very grateful for you. And we want to support you to be able to do your job and really kick this school year off as best as possible so you can build those good habits and stuff. And this can be a more seamless experience, and you can provide what only you can to our children. I think that is it. Yeah, thank you. So, you guys, if you have any questions, you can send in those. And for the giveaway, after the live stream, you got to post 2 quotes, 2 things that you learned. It doesn't have to be a quote, direct quote, or whatever, but write down, just comment on either on this post or the giveaway post, just 2 things that you took away from the workshop. And here's my commercial here for doing that, all the great stuff that we offer. However, thank you guys so much for watching, and we're going to follow up real quick here and in the future again to give you guys continued support, at least for a couple weeks. It may extend out 5-6 weeks, depending how that looks. But we would love to help, love to do something. So if you think of something that we can do, if you're like, man, I need a structure, something that I can do. What are some of those habits that I can prepare my day-to-day on? What are some of those, when we look at those long-term stress reduction strategies, where do I look for those? Or we're talking about going through a breathing practice. When do I implement that? How can I make that more habitual? It's so hard to learn how to do that. We can do stuff like that as a group together, things of that nature. So send those into the group if you're watching via YouTube or through our website. If you guys don't have Facebook, then you can send those to me via email, or just respond to one of the emails you get after that. So thank you very much, Rachel. We're very, very grateful to be able to help out anybody with, again, information that's helped me so much. So we are grateful to be able to give that back to people who are making a huge difference in our community every single day. You guys doing the dirty work. So thank you guys so much. I'm going to hang out on here for about 45 more seconds if you just happen to have any questions right now. But otherwise, we're going to get out of here. And again, make sure you send in your quotes. Leave them on the giveaway post, or you can leave it on the live stream. We're giving away River Roasters, free stuff from the gym, free memberships, all that stuff. And again, like I said, would love to do something with everybody for continued support in the future via this group. Also, last thing, I done kicked everybody off. Invite your coworkers to this. If you thought this was valuable, tag them in the comments or invite them to the group, whatever you got to do. It seems like we could be giving away $1 million and people would be like, it's not worth my time. But if your friend tells you, hey, I watched this, it was helpful to me, it's just like instant. It's a no-brainer there. So just because we're a business, sometimes it turns people off. So invite some people to the group. And if you felt like you got a lot of benefit from this, invite people to like our Facebook page. That is very, very helpful to us. Again, getting recommendation from the friend is number one. So invite your coworkers to the group. If you thought it was valuable, tell them to watch it. And again, be happy to interact with you guys for the next couple of weeks. And if you don't have any other questions, we're going to get out of here. And we greatly, greatly appreciate everybody sticking with us for an hour and 15 minutes. Again, I don't know anybody I want to spend that amount of time. But on behalf of Uplift Fitness, myself, and Gym Geeks Radio, our podcast, thank you all so much for being with us here on Saturday morning, and we'll see you very soon.